Today is August 13th, 2025, and we are now 20 minutes into the New York session. Um, so if we take a look at the higher time frame, the C2 time frame for us, the hourly, we can see that we had an accumulation MB validated. This was basically yesterday's price action. We had a very bullish day. Um, then we came up to this point, having some sort of pause here through an MMB1 price basically coming to test the 10 EMA, and from there we had a validation of this MMB1 and price going higher into new all-time highs on NQ. If we take a look at our context time frame, basically from this point and onwards, we had the start of a new bullish cycle out of this accumulation MB into MMB1, MMB2, and then MMB2 also validated through this move here. And right before the start of the session, we had a move up to this high here. And from there, we had a pause, and this is basically where we are standing at the moment. So we are on our C time frame. We are on an ongoing bullish cycle, which is in alignment with our higher time frame, basically with price above MMB1 and above rising EMAs. So this is a scenario where we can basically look into the validation time frame and the development of a bullish price cycle there to get involved on the flushes from MMB1 through MMB4. So if we take a look at our validation out of the start of the session, which was around this area, we had this move to the upside. We had an accumulation MB around this area, and we came here. So at that point, we can consider this MMB1. So we were looking for a flush into the EMAs and a continuation from there. But actually, what we see here is a lot of wiki price action, and basically price falling below the EMAs. So this is not an action that was favorable for a follow-up of any move. And from there, we are currently here, kind of inside of a new buildup of a cycle here through accumulation MB. And this one here could be very well the start of a cycle through an MMB1. So let's take a look at this on our other screen right here. So let's take a look at this. So the flush here from this point, we had here a touch of the 20. But again, still wiki price action, so it's kind of hard to build a nice containment line here. So at this point, we could say that when this was building, maybe here, this would have been the containment line. And at this point, maybe there was, there could have been an entry around this point. But again, it's still too wiki, so it's not a favorable price action to follow. And from there, we had, or we're having at this moment, this very strong move to the downside. So looking at our EVC, we are getting a flush here as part of this MMB3. So on our context time frame, we're coming back to the 20 EMA right here. So from this point, we have to wait to see if this is gonna be a sustained move to the upside to complete at least this bullish price cycle that we have been seeing from this point, or if it wants to fail and basically go to the downside, as part of what could be very well here a flush on our hourly time frame. So we're gonna wait. At this point, this is basically melting, so there's nothing for us to consider here. We have to wait to see if this is gonna pause at some point and start bouncing from there, or otherwise this is basically a market where we have to stay on the sidelines. So we're gonna wait until new conditions favorable for us to follow a proper move. We are a little bit over 1 hour after the market opened today, and basically from that time we had or we were inside a very well-defined bullish cycle. So we were expecting the bullishness to continue, but actually what happened is we had a reaction to the upside at this point, followed by some weaky price action as part of this flush. So we at that time were kind of following this, but due to the fact that this was so weaky, there was kind of no entry around this area here. And basically from there we had a flush below the EMAs. Then we had here some sort of accumulation MB validated through this candle, and then this was again considered an MMB1, but basically this one failed hard through this bearish candle that basically melted from here. And from there we basically had a bearish move continuing down through this bearish cycle on the validation time frame. But as we were at this point here, we were basically flushing as part of MMB3 on our context. We waited to see if there were gonna be some sort of reaction or some bounce out of the 10 or the 20 EMA here, but none of that happened, and actually price continued to the downside. And if we take a look at our hourly time frame, this is basically the flush that came down. This is something that we mentioned earlier this morning, that we could very well see a flush here up to the EMAs on our C2 time frame, and this is basically what happened. And we are at the time at the 20 EMA on our C2 time frame. So we have to take a look here if we're gonna get some sort of stage 1 around this area and a move to the upside. But it's also good, or it's worth to take into account that in case we see a move to the upside, we shouldn't be following that one for entries, not until we see price accumulating on our context time frame. So it's good to note that, again, even if we see a price rising at this point from this area, if this would give us some stage 1 and some validation of an accumulation MB around this area, we should wait to see again some sort of accumulation and price above the EMAs, which are currently, as we can see, falling. So we have to wait to see if that happens. If we see here a further failure of this move here and price closing below the EMAs, then we should very well start looking into possible continuation to the downside. So we gotta wait to see what happens with price basically around this area on our C2 time frame, and then we will decide from there what could be the best move for us to follow. So at this point, it's important to note that we failed to get a bounce from the 20 EMA here on the C2 time frame. Instead, we saw price keeping the bearish run that started from basically the start of the session today. So at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna flip the charts to take a look at this bearish move and try to follow that one to the bearish side now that we have alignment on our different time frames with our C2 having price above the EMAs, with our C time frame as well having here at this point, this was the first pause that we saw earlier, so that we can label this one as an MMB1. And here, most importantly, on our validation time frame, we had this bearish cycle coming from this distribution NB into an MMB1, MMB2. This was part probably of the same MMB2. Then we got into an MMB3 here. We had another flush here as part of this same MMB3. And then we are here above, probably here, having a flush out of MMB4. So this could be the last chance that we have to follow this one. Let's go to our other screen and follow that one. This is a very aggressive move to the upside. So it's not strange that we get at this time that we get the start of flush on our context time frame. But let's follow this one just to see if there's a chance to get into a move as part of this MMB4. So at this point, we should start seeing a move to the downside, a push to the downside that would put price again here above the EMAs. At this point, we had this candle close below. So now we should see sellers come in. So if we consider this, we should be above the 20 by the time this would be a tap in. But we are actually seeing this one fail, so this is going to be a no trade for us, as we see price basically falling below the EMAs here as part of this MMB4. So this is not strange, again, as we have seen these as we have seen this price cycle on the V happening, and we had for sure some moves as part of the cycle. And as we got into MMB4, due to the extension of the move, it was we had a good chance to see this one fail and to see some sort of flush as part of the context time frame. So price could, just as this is happening right now, come into the 5, the 10, or the 20, and then start building a bearish move for a continuation, in this case to the downside. So we're gonna keep on looking for the price action around these areas, and we'll be following any sort of build-up of a new bearish cycle that we could follow. So let's see if this bearish move that was coming out of the start of the session is something that will be sustained into the rest of today's session. So after following on this flush here on MMB4 and seeing that one fail, we continued looking at the price action around this, and again looking at the context time frame, what we're getting is basically the buildup of this MMB1 with a flush and price coming back to the 5 and right now resting right at the 10 EMA. So from this point here, the basically our task will be to follow price on the validation time frame and wait for the buildup of a stage 1, a consolidation of price, and then the buildup of a new cycle, in this case to the bearish side. So we have to wait for a validation of a distribution MB around the area that could get presented here if price decides to build some sort of consolidation here, and then we will be enabled to follow the further MMBs and follow the flushes for entry opportunity. So we will still be waiting here to see if that's the way that price is gonna continue throughout the session. We could start seeing some sort of stage 1 here around this area due to the fact that we are on the 10 EMA, or we could see price keep on in this case flushing into the 20 and then get a reaction from the 20. So we're gonna wait and see how this develops. Just taking a quick look here on the validation at this time, we can certainly consider this high here that was built as our distribution MB. I'm gonna just put a question mark right on it. This one has not been validated yet, so we have to wait for price to come above this high so that we have this distribution MB validated. Let's just wait to see. This candle is gonna close in 10 seconds, and if that one closes above this high, then for sure this would be a valid distribution MB. So we're gonna just remove the question mark here. Now this candle has closed above this high, so this is a valid distribution MB. And now what we're gonna do is just wait to see if price goes away from the EMAs here and then comes back as a flush, as an MMB1 flush to the 10 or the 20 EMA. So we're gonna wait to see how this is gonna present. So at this time we're kind of seeing price made that move away from the EMA, so now flushing at this time to the 5 EMA, so as part of MMB1. So we're gonna label this one here, and we're gonna go to the other screen here in order to follow that move and see if that presents an opportunity. So we're gonna start by drawing the containment line here and try to follow that. We have to wait to see at least price come to the 20 EMA here before making a move, in this case as a continuation to the bearish side. So let's get here and prepare our position in case that one would present. Now we've come almost to the 20. So if we see here we move above this high, that would enable us to follow this one. In this case to the downside. So we just got tapped in. Now we're gonna wait to see how this move is gonna develop. So we had a move in our expected direction, and then I come back to entry point. So now this is the second time that price moves above and comes back to entry point. So all this time price has been testing the 5 EMA here on the validation. Now let's see if through this push to the upside we get to the validation of MMB1. Now if we get some sort of retracement and a move to the upside, that should enable us to place our trade at break even, but not yet. So we have to wait. There's some wicks developing here. That's something that I do not like very much. So we should take a decision if this is something that we want to follow or just get out. So I'm gonna just give a last chance here, because if this one fails, price gonna probably go here to test one more time the EMAs. So just like it's doing at this time. It's a lot of back and forth. So let's wait to see. At least we get to this point here. So we got there for as we came to this point here, we did not validate the MMB. So we just came close to it, and then we came back again. So that was, in this case, the decision that I made. This is not the usual management that we do. In this case, we should still be in the trade, as we have not made a proper move here in order to put the trade at break even. Neither went we over the 50% drawdown. So, but I do not very much like the way this is going, with a consolidation of price around entry point and too much back and forth. So as soon as I saw the chance to get out here, that was for me the right move, because I was expecting actually this to happen. So price to go for a new test of the 10, and in this case probably of the 20. And actually this one came with an aggressive move to the upside with this bullish candle, and that would have been a in this case a stop loss for us. So once again, this is kind of discretionary, based specifically on our rules. We normally would have or would need to wait here. I'm gonna just draw this one to explain. I would wait at least for a move such as this one here, and then to the upside, and to see a break of this high here. So at this point here, I would place the trade to break even. But in this case, we did not have that. We just saw this back and forth of price. We came to break even, went into profit, came again to break even, went into profit, came again to break even. So at this point, I was again probably expecting this one to fail and go at least, maybe not a failure, but at least to a new test of the 10 and the 20 EMA. So that's when I decided to place my TP right at the top of the MB. And this is basically where I just got tapped out and then price failed. So in this case, after price went here below our entry point, we never had the chance after it went above the 50% drawdown to come back and close us at break even. So in this case, if we should have managed this one just according to our rules, this one would have ended as a -1. So it's important in this case to be aware of how price is actually moving as the trade is developing, and to get that information of the price movement at that time in accordance to what we see on the other charts. And in this case, as we saw that there was a chance of a new flush and price was kind of indecisive here, and it was kind of weakening here with buyers coming in and pushing price below this validation point. That was kind of some information that was given to us in order to manage the trade differently. One way would have been just to close at break even, or the other one was the one that I executed, just to give price a chance, a final chance here to get to this high and take the profits there. So this is in order to make a quick review on this trade, because this one is not actually the normal management and follow-up that we do on trades, but the difference here comes from the fact that there was again some sort of consolidation around the entry point. So that's something that I don't usually like. I normally expect quick or almost immediate reaction and follow through the stop loss, not the stop loss, the buy stop that we use. But in this case, taking into account this price action and taking into account the overall MMB where we were at that time, the EMAs, so that was kind of the information that we used to manage the trade in this case. So at this time we are here on MMB1 still. We got, I'm gonna move to the other screen. We got a move, which is the one that we took out of the reaction from the 20 here. So now we are gonna just wait to see how this one develops. At this time we are 4 hours into the session today, and I am about to close the session for myself. So just as we have been doing throughout the last few days, I'm gonna go and run a quick review on all the action that happened up to this point. We're gonna take a deeper look at the two trades that I took and other opportunities that could have presented, and basically to get some idea of what was available today. So once again, just as we discussed earlier today, we were coming into the session with a relevant bullish momentum. So this was yesterday. Throughout the overnight session, we had the validation of this momentum MB, and we came up to this point here right before the session to this high, which I ended up labeling at this point as MMB2, when we saw basically around here. Yeah, that was later when I labeled this one. When we started, this one wasn't present, I believe. I just knew that we were above MMB1 and probably expecting the move to continue to the upside. So at that time, this is just the price action on the context time frame. So from this area here, out of the validation of MMB1 on the C2, we had the buildup of a bullish cycle to the upside through this accumulation MB into MMB1 into MMB2. This was kind of a long-term consolidation of price, but certainly price came from this point up to the EMAs. And from there, we had a move validating this MMB2 through this candle close. So all this happened right before the start of New York session. And then as we came closer to the start of the session, we are going to take a look at the validation time frame. So we were here throughout, again, this bullish move that came out of the validation of MMB2. So around this area here, price came up, and then we had some sort of reset, we could say here. And then from there, we came up to this point here. This was right before the start of the session, of the New York session. And then we saw sellers come in, pushing price to the downside here, but immediately we saw buyers coming in and once again making a move to the upside. So this was all aligned with our expectation of price moving to the upside. So as I saw this move here and price starting to pause at this point, what I did was I considered this high here as MMB1. So I started following up this flush for a continuation to the upside, and in alignment with our C2 and our C time frame, that enabled us to look for buys. So this is the flush that we had on our entry time frame. So we drew this containment line. We had price come into the 20 and then bounced from there. And what I did was I drew MMB1, MMB2. In this case, we had a buy stop above this double MB, which was above the containment line and above rising MAs in this case. So we could say that it was valid. But in this case, well, this was the trade that I placed, exactly how I placed it. And the thing here is that the risk that I took on this trade wasn't enough, as it was, in this case, just protecting MMB2 here, but not the whole MMB, and not here the EMAs, the lower point of the EMAs, which is something that I normally like or try to do based on the usual trades that I take. So due to this thing and the other stuff here, and I remember I mentioned this during the session live, is that there was pretty much a lot of wicks here on this retracement, so that was not optimal. And the other thing here is that should I have considered the correct the correct size of the stop loss, it would have been right here. So if we take a look at the risk to reward, coming at least to the validation of this MMB here, this wouldn't be enough. This wouldn't be justifying for us to taking the risk for such a small reward in this case. So all of this is what I was thinking at the time I was looking, and I was actually in the trade here. So my decision at that point, discretionary, was to just get out of the trade. Um, and in this case, I was able to get out with a small profit here, around 0.39R. And in this case, price came up to the high of MMB1, not validating it as the candle did not close above the high, just basically reached that high, and from there it basically melted. So it was kind of lucky for me, just to be honest, to get out here for a small profit, and then price came basically down and would have tapped me out for a -1. And also, even if I had used the correct stop, which is this one here, the trade would also have taken me out sometime later around here. So again, this is not, I'm not gonna even write this down here, because this is not a trade that should have been considered based on our system and on our rules, even though we can for sure say that this is a double MB, that the entry point is above the containment line and above rising EMAs. But we have to take into consideration the previous context and the previous price action, and in this time there was certainly a lot of choppiness, a lot of weeks here, and again, in this case, the size of the stop loss here was way bigger than the size of the remaining part here that we have available to the validation of the MMB. So in terms of risk, that obviously does not make any sense. So this is not actually a trade to be considered. So I just drew this one because this is one that I took. But as I saw and basically was aware of this nuances that I just mentioned, I just decided on my discretion to get out, and I got out at this point before it actually melted. So that was just to comment on this one, but this one again should not have been or shouldn't be a trade to be considered based on what we look for. After that point, we had price come back to the EMAs and fail. So we had a move to the downside. After that, what I saw was a possible accumulation at this point. Let's remember that we were at this point on the session waiting for price to go higher due to the overall context. So I saw this accumulation MB. After that, I considered this high here as a momentum MB1. So I'm gonna label it that way. And then let's go and take a look at the entry time frame to see how that went. So we had a flush from this high up to the 20 EMA, and we had at this time this double MB build up. So the conditions were met here for an entry, and this one here would have ended up being a break even if we had basically follow our rules. Why is that? Because as we got a tap in, we went almost immediately into drawdown. And if we take a look here at the drawdown there, we went a little bit over a 50% drawdown. Here's the 50%. This is this line here, and price crossed it a little bit, so we went over a 50% drawdown. And based on our rules, when that happens, we wait. If price comes back to our entry point, we just got out at break even. And this is actually what happened in this case. Price came here and then continued its bearish continued the bearish move. So in this case, it's worth mentioning that the rule that we have would have paid off. In this case, would have saved us a loss. So this is one trade that we're gonna just put on our list to just see what was again available throughout the session. After that point, price basically melted, went below the EMAs on the validation time frame. And when we were watching the context, basically this is this flush that we have here. At that time, I was looking at this one as MMB3 on the context time frame as part of that bullish cycle. So we were expecting some reaction from this point here to the upside, again due to our overall bias. But actually price came here, made this weak, came back to the EMA at this around, let's see, we came here, then we came down again. So we continued here the bearish move. There was no consolidation, so no move here to the upside. So price just kept on going to the downside. I even started labeling here this bearish cycle after this distribution MB, the validation of the MMB1, the MMB2. But it's again important to note that we were not looking into sales here due to the fact that at first we were just as part of this flush on the context. So up to this point here, around this area, all this area was part of this flush here on the context time frame. And even after that, even though we had a close of price below the EMAs, due to the fact that we use also a C2 time frame for further confirmation on our entries, all this time that price was flushing here on the context time frame, we were part of a flush on the C2 time frame. So we were expecting here some sort of reaction out of the 20 EMA on the C time frame, which is around this area. Let's go take a look here where that was. So price kept on falling up to this point here at one time. From here, we were expecting price to consolidate and move to the upside. That did not happen, and price continued to the downside, coming up to this point here. And basically at this time, when price was at this moment, we had this candle on the context time frame, the full body candle here. So price was well below the EMAs. So basically at this time, this is when I decided to flip the charts and start looking for sells due to the fact that we were having some sort of alignment on our time frames to look for sells. So let's go and take a look at this by flipping the chart, so that will make that much more clear for us. So this is the time when I decided that we could be looking into sells. So here Um, After price got up to this point here, we saw price basically starting a bullish move, and on our context time frame we had here, maybe this is not that clear in this case, but we had some sort certainly of a distribution, and then I labeled this high as an MMB1 when I started seeing this flush here. So if we take a look at our validation time frame, there was certainly a bearish cycle here through all these MMBs. This one was MMB2, then MMB3, and then at this point here, we can see this is just what I mentioned before, just with the flip chart, with the charts flipped. At this point, if we take a look at the C2 time frame, price was at this point well above the EMAs, so that enabled us to start taking a look at a possible sell. What happened at that point is that basically price flushed here. I was looking into a possible sell opportunity on that area. Let's go and take a look at that. Let's go and take a look at that one. I'm just gonna get in there on the entry time frame. So this was around this area here. So let's draw a containment line here. This is more or less how it looked like. We came up to this point, to the 20, but price never came above the EMAs and kept on flushing, so there was nothing for us to do at that time. So after that, we had basically price going above the EMAs, below, above, below once again. So a lot of back and forth around this area, and all of this was part of this flush, this MMB1 flush. So price was coming and touching, in this case, the 20 EMA. So this is around this area. And as we saw that happening, we said there can be certainly some sort of bounce from the 10 EMA here on the context time frame, and that led to the buildup of a bearish cycle on the validation time frame. So we had this distribution in B, price went to this point, we had this flush here, and at that time this was creating an MMB1. So this is, I believe, the other trade that I saw happening. Let's go there, and it was right here. So we had this flush here as price came to the 10 EMA, and from there we had the buildup of this double MB. This is the one that I'm gonna draw right there. So I placed a buy stop at this point here, with the expectancy to see price come and validate MMB1 and continue, in this case, the bearish move. What happened there is that price tapped us in here, came here up to around 0.7 R, and then came back to break even. So came back to our entry point. We were not break even at this time because we had not made the proper move to enable us to move our stop loss to break even. So we stayed there. Then we had a move once again into profit, once again back to our entry point, then into profit, then into entry point. So at this time, just after seeing all of this, and also watching this week's here on the validation time frame, I was honestly just expecting to see price have a flush deeper, as we had certainly buyers here pressing price to come below the EMAs. So at that point, my decision was to place my take profit, or move my take profit right around this area, which would be the validation of the MMB1 on this time frame, on our 1 minute time frame. And as I did that, basically price came right to my TP and then reversed. So I explained this in detail throughout the live session, that this is not usual management, but was much more, you could say, discretionary, but actually based on the price action that was occurring here. And well, that was basically the main reason why I decided to have our trade here for this take profit, as my expectancy at that time was to see price fail. And actually this is what happened here. We had price coming back to coming here to test the 20, and from there actually failing and going below the 20. And after that we had some consolidation here, so that led us to consider this high as a distribution NB. When we saw that distribution NB being validated, we started considering a new bearish cycle. So we wanted to see price on the validation go above the EMAs and a comeback, and this is actually what happened here. So let's go and take a look at that time to see how that happened. This is here. So we went from this high and we drew this containment line here. So first we came up to this point. Price went here, wicked below the EMA, closed below the EMA. So this was around here. So at that time, the containment line looked like this, and I was waiting for a for an entry opportunity at that time. So this one here through this high wouldn't be fully valid for me, as I was just at the EMA, and normally we want to be above. And if we consider this other high here, so if we take a look at this MMB and this other MMB, which would maybe be this one here, here you could argue that there was some sort of entry. So let's go and place that sell to see how that one would have developed. So that would have been our stop. So in this case, we would have been tapped in here, got into an over 50% drawdown, then came back and back into entry point. So this one here, in case we would have taken that, this one would have been a break-even trade. In this case, this one went in the direction that we were looking for after this, after being break even. But this is again part of the rules that we have, and just as on the previous trade, this one here, we were able to saved us a loss in this case. Well, we probably lost some profit there, but well, it's part of our rule. So this one would have been closed as a break even, as a break even as well. So from there, so just let's go, let's see the previous one. So this one, this is the one again that I mentioned, due to the fact that we were seeing price action develop that way. This one ended up being a, let's see, 0.8R. So we're gonna write this one here, 0.8R. So that one was actually in between those. Then we got this break even here that we just discussed. And after that, we had price going to the bearish side. We had this week here, but still inside MMB1 on the validation. So then kind of choppy price action here. Then we had a validation of MMB1. We could argue into MMB2 on the validation, as we got validated through this candle, and then we came to this point. And at this time, we were looking into possible entries throughout the flush out of MMB2. So let's just go there and take a look. So this was the containment line at this point. So price came here just below the 10 EMA. And then we saw some reaction from there. We could say through this MMB and this one here as MMB2. So that was a double MB. Price was above the containment line and above rising MAs. So this was a tap in at that point. And that one just came up here, up to 0.5R, came back to entry point, and then directly into a loss for a -1. And then after that, we had then price moving to the downside again, wasn't able to validate MMB2, and then from there it just came under the EMAs, tried to reclaim this. At that time we could say this was probably some sort of distribution MB, but then we had this aggressive move to the downside, to the upside, sorry. Let's go and see that one. So we're talking here about this flush. This is the flush we're talking about. And then maybe here you could argue there was some sort of buy stop that would have failed, I believe. But the reason you could here consider that maybe this movement here out of the EMAs was not enough, and actually this was all compressed into one big bullish candle here that actually closed below the EMAs. So this is certainly not an optimal setup. I normally would like to see at least 3 or more candles building the flush. So in this case, this wasn't a kind of a good opportunity here. So actually nothing to or nothing worth to put in risk. And then we had a failure, certainly. Then we tried to come back up, but then we failed. So this has now become pretty choppy. And this is basically live price where we are right now at the moment. So this is good to show that in this case here, this should have been just a 0.8 hour day. And actually this 0.8 hour comes from some sort of discretionary decision on taking on managing the trade that was, I think, deeply discussed here. Normally I would say 90% of the time we stick to our rules to manage the trades, but there are certain times when we see some specificities, such as this one that we discussed here, around that area where we saw price kind of being indecisive all these weeks. The chance that price could very well go below the EMAs to test the 20, and that would have stopped us out. So this is something that we can take into account, and it's good to be able and note all those things as we see the trade progress and see how that is developing on not just the entry time frame but also the other time frames that we use, specifically the validation. So this was basically the session today. Again, not much here. So in this case we had certainly a bearish move, but most of it here, as we can see, this was nothing that we could consider due to the fact that it was not aligned with our C2 time frame. It was not until around this area here that we were kind of on alignment to start watching for shorts. And as we have just noticed and saw throughout our analysis, none of those entries provided follow through to our full TP. So there were no full TP trades for us today, and this is part of what we will experience. So every session is different. Every session has or brings its opportunities, and as there are certainly days, as we have seen on previous session, I think last week, there are certainly occasions when we have 2 or 3 full TPs on one session. There are for sure other sessions where price just does not give opportunities for good trades based on our system. So that's also good to note that not every day we are gonna get good opportunities, and in this case I was fortunate to close the day green on a day where conditions were not actually the best to perform. So this is the session today, and we will be hopefully back tomorrow.